The air in the studio of The View was electric, charged with anticipation as the audience buzzed and the cameras rolled, capturing every moment of what was supposed to be a routine promotional appearance. Michael B. Jordan, the charismatic Hollywood star known for his roles in Black Panther and Creed, stepped onto the set with his signature charm, his tailored suit catching the stage lights as he waved to the cheering crowd. The hosts Whoopi Goldberg, Sunny Hostin, Sarah Haynes, and Joy Behar greeted him with smiles, but there was an undercurrent of tension, particularly from Joy, whose sharp wit and unfiltered commentary were legendary. As Michael settled into the guest chair, the conversation began innocently enough, with Whoopi asking about his latest project, a gritty action film that had critics buzzing. The audience was eating it up, hanging on his every word, but Joy's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a sly grin as she leaned forward, ready to steer the discussion into choppier waters. She started with a seemingly playful jab, questioning whether Michael's choice of action-heavy roles was a sign he was avoiding the emotional depth of his earlier dramatic work. The comment landed awkwardly, and Michael's smile tightened, but he responded with grace, explaining his passion for diverse roles that challenged him physically and emotionally. The audience clapped, but Joy wasn't done. She pressed further, her tone growing sharper, suggesting that his recent films were more about flash than substance, a critique that felt personal rather than professional. The crowd murmured, sensing the shift, and Michael's jaw clenched, his eyes locking onto Joy's with a mix of disbelief and restraint. He countered calmly, citing the cultural impact of his work and the intentional choices behind his career, but Joy doubled down, accusing him of playing it safe in Hollywood. The other hosts tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground, with Sunny praising Michael's directorial debut, but Joy's relentless prodding was like a match to dry tinder. Michael, known for his poise, began to show cracks, his voice steady but laced with an edge as he defended his artistic integrity. The audience was riveted, their cheers and gasps punctuating the exchange, as Joy's questions grew more pointed, veering into his personal life via his dating history, his public image as a heartthrob. "Are you just coasting on your looks?" she asked with a smirk, and the crowd gasped audibly. Michael paused, his silence heavy, before delivering a measured but cutting response. "I've built my career on hard work, not headlines." "Joy, maybe you should try asking about the work instead of the gossip." The studio erupted, some audience members cheering, others whispering, as Joy's face flushed, her usual confidence shaken. The tension was palpable, and the other hosts exchanged nervous glances, sensing the interview was teetering on the edge of disaster. Michael's words hung in the air, a quiet rebuke that carried the weight of his frustration, and the crowd's reaction only amplified the moment. Joy, caught off guard, tried to laugh it off, but her retort, a weak attempt to pivot back to his film, lacked her usual bite. Michael leaned back, his expression unreadable, as if weighing whether to continue or walk away from the verbal sparring match Joy had ignited. The stage was set for a confrontation that would soon spiral beyond anyone's control, and the audience could feel it, their eyes darting between the star and the host, waiting for the next move. The energy in the room was no longer that of a friendly talk show chat but a high-stakes showdown, and Michael's next words would either diffuse the situation or set the stage ablaze. As the segment continued, the atmosphere grew thicker, the studio lights seeming to burn hotter as the verbal volleys between Michael B. Jordan and Joy Behar intensified. Joy, perhaps sensing she lost the upper hand, shifted tactics, her questions now laced with a patronizing tone that grated on everyone watching. She brought up Michael's advocacy for diversity in Hollywood, but framed it in a way that implied he was merely checking boxes rather than genuinely invested. The accusation stung, and Michael's eyes flashed with a fire that even the most casual viewer could see. He leaned forward, his voice low but commanding, and began dismantling her insinuation with a precision that left no room for misinterpretation. He spoke of his production company, his mentorship of young black filmmakers, and the personal sacrifices he'd made to elevate stories that mattered. Each word was deliberate, a masterclass in controlled intensity, and the audience responded with fervent applause, their support for Michael drowning out Joy's attempt to interject. She tried to pivot, asking about his training regimen for Creed 3, But even that came with a barb. Do you ever get tired of playing the same tough guy? The question was meant to provoke, and it did. Michael's response was swift, his tone sharp but never raised. Joy, I play characters who fight for something: a family, legacy, justice. If that's tough to you, maybe you're missing the point. The crowd roared, and Joy's smile faltered, her attempt to regain control slipping through her fingers like sand. Whippy, ever the diplomat, jumped in, trying to lighten the mood with a joke about Michael's biceps. But the damage was done. The exchange had shifted from a professional interview to a personal clash, and Michael's patience was wearing thin. He sat back, his arms crossed, his body language screaming restraint, but his eyes told a different story, one of a man who'd had enough. Joy, perhaps unaware of how far she'd pushed, pressed on, bringing up a rumored feud with another actor, a topic so irrelevant to his film promotion that even the audience groaned. Michael's response was a masterstroke of wit and shade. I don't do feuds, Joy. I do films. Maybe you're confusing me with the drama you're trying to stir up here. The studio exploded, the cheers so loud they nearly drowned out the host's attempts to move on. Sarah Haynes, visibly uncomfortable, tried to redirect to Michael's charity work, but Joy, undeterred, shot back with a comment about his carefully curated image. That was the breaking point. Michael's face hardened, and he stood, adjusting his jacket with a calm that belied the storm brewing inside. You know what, Joy? I came here to talk about my work, not to be your morning entertainment, he said, his voice steady but dripping with finality. The audience gasped, some shouting encouragement as he stepped away from the chair, his movements deliberate. Joy's mouth opened, but no words came out, a rare moment of speechlessness for the veteran host. The other hosts scrambled to fill the silence, with Sonny offering a weak compliment about his film, but Michael was already moving toward the stage's edge, his back to the panel, signaling he was done. The crowd was on its feet, a mix of shock and admiration fueling their ovation, as the cameras struggled to keep up with the unexpected turn of events. Michael's exit wasn't just a walkout, it was a statement. A refusal to let his narrative be twisted for the sake of daytime TV drama. The studio was left in chaos, the hosts fumbling to regain control as the screen faded to commercial, leaving viewers at home stunned and social media already ablaze with clips of the confrontation. The fallout from Michael B. Jordan's clash with Joy Behar was immediate, the studio still reverberating with the audience's cheers and gasps as the show cut to commercial. Backstage, the energy was chaotic, producers whispering frantically, staff members exchanging wide-eyed glances, and the hosts left to process what had just unfolded on live television. Michael, now out of sight of the cameras, didn't linger. His team, waiting in the wings, met him with nods of support, their faces reflecting the same mix of pride and disbelief that the audience felt. He didn't speak, his silence louder than any words, as he made his way to the green room, his posture still radiating the quiet strength that had defined his response on stage. Meanwhile, on the set, Joy Behar sat stunned, her usual quick wit replaced by a rare moment of vulnerability. The other hosts tried to smooth things over, with Whoopi launching into a monologue about the importance of respectful dialogue, but the audience wasn't listening as they were too busy tweeting, posting, and sharing clips of Michael's verbal takedown. Social media was a wildfire, with hashtags like #MikeLBJordan and #JoyBehar trending within minutes, fans praising Michael's poise and calling out Joy's overstep. He didn't humiliate he or she humiliated herself, one tweet read, racking up thousands of likes. Others called Michael's response a masterclass in handling shade, while some criticized Joy for turning a promotional interview into a personal attack. Back in the studio, as the show resumed after the break, Joy attempted to address the moment, her tone uncharacteristically subdued. "Maybe I got a little carried away," she said, forcing a laugh, but the audience's response was tepid, their loyalty clearly with Michael. The other hosts nodded, trying to move on to the next segment, but the air felt heavy, the usual banter strained. Offstage, Michael's team was already fielding calls from media outlets, each clamoring for a comment on the viral moment. He declined to speak, letting his actions on stage stand as his statement. But sources close to him later shared that he'd been blindsided by Joy's approach, Having expected a professional discussion about his film, the incident sparked a broader conversation online about talk show dynamics, with many pointing out the pattern of hosts pushing guests too far for the sake of ratings. Fans of Michael rallied around him, sharing clips of his past interviews where he'd handled tough questions with grace, contrasting them with Joy's aggressive tactics. Some called for an apology, while others demanded Joy's suspension, though such calls were more about the heat of the moment than any realistic expectation. The media frenzy grew, with outlets dissecting every word, every glance, every pause in the exchange, turning it into a cultural moment. For Michael, though, it was about principally he'd come to promote a project he believed in, not to be baited into a spectacle. His walkout wasn't just a reaction, it was a reclaiming of his narrative, a refusal to let his story be reduced to tabloid fodder. As the day wore on, the clip of his final line to Joy, "I came here to talk about my work, not to be your morning entertainment," became the soundbite of the moment, replayed across news channels and shared endlessly online. The incident, while uncomfortable for The View's producers, cemented Michael's reputation as a star who commanded respect, not just for his talent but for his ability to stand his ground. Joy, meanwhile, faced a wave of criticism, her usual defenders quieter than usual, as the public weighed in on whether she'd crossed a line. The moment was a turning point, not just for the show but for how celebrity interviews were perceived, sparking debates about authenticity, respect, and the fine line between entertainment and exploitation. By the next morning, the Michael B. Jordan and Joy Behar clash had transcended The View, becoming a full-blown cultural phenomenon that dominated headlines, talk shows, and social media feeds. News outlets ran think pieces analyzing the power dynamics of the exchange, with some praising Michael for his composure and others questioning whether Joy's provocative style had finally gone too far. On platforms like X, fans and critics alike dissected the moment frame by frame, with memes of Michael's piercing stare and Joy's stunned expression flooding timelines. One viral post juxtaposed a still of Michael walking off with the caption, "When you come for the king, you better not miss." Another showed Joy's flustered face with the words, "Joy Behar learning actions have consequences." The public's reaction was split but passionate, as some saw Michael's walkout as a justified response to disrespectful questioning, while others, loyal to Joy's no-holds-barred style, argued she was just doing her job as a provocateur. Talk shows like The Breakfast Club and Good Morning America invited commentators to weigh in, with many siding with Michael, noting that guests deserve to be treated with respect, especially when promoting meaningful work. Behind the scenes, The View's producers were in damage control, reportedly holding emergency meetings to address the backlash and plan how to move forward. Rumors swirled that Joy was privately remorseful, though publicly she maintained a defiant stance, tweeting a cryptic, "I call it like I see it, always have, always will." The tweet only fanned the flames, with responses ranging from support to scathing critiques. Michael, meanwhile, stayed silent, letting the public's reaction speak for him, though his team hinted he was focusing on his next project rather than dwelling on the drama. The incident even sparked a broader discussion about the role of talk shows in the modern media landscape, with critics arguing that shows like The View often prioritize sensationalism over substance. Some fans launched petitions calling for Joy to apologize on air, while others organized to boost Michael's film, turning the controversy into a rallying cry for his work. By the following week, The View addressed the incident again, with Whoopi reading a carefully worded statement about valuing their guests and promising to keep the conversation respectful. Joy, noticeably quieter, nodded along but offered no formal apology, a move that kept the debate alive. For Michael, the moment was a testament to his resilience, a reminder that even in the face of provocation, he could command the narrative without losing his cool. The walkout became a defining moment in his career,